A £100 million signing costs £20 million in the year it happens. The fee gets spread across the length of the contract. Last November, Premier League clubs voted 14-6 to scrap the rules built on top of that. The replacement takes effect this season. Nobody has been punished under it yet, but this is how it works. Start with £100 million. A transfer fee is not counted in the year it is paid. It gets spread across the length of the contract. So £100 million on a 5-year deal shows up as £20 million a year. The same fee on an 8-year deal shows up as 12.5. Same player, same money leaving the bank, a different number in the accounts. Chelsea worked this out faster than anyone. Enzo Fernandez, 8 years. Moses Caicedo, 8 years. Mudryk, 8.5. It was legal, and it was obvious, and it worked. So the Premier League kept it. A fee can now only be spread across 5 years, whatever the contract says. UEFA did the same. The cap was not backdated. Chelsea's long contracts still run under the old rules. The rule all of this was built around was called PSR, profitability and sustainability. One number, a club could not lose more than £105 million across 3 years. In the whole history of that rule, it produced 3 punishments, all in the same season. Everton, 10 points, cut to 6 on appeal. Everton again, 2 more, and Nottingham Forest with 4. Meanwhile, Chelsea sold 2 hotels for £76.5 million. They sold them to a company owned by their own owners. The league checked the price and accepted it. Then they sold the women's team, £200 million, to another company owned by the same people. That team's revenue was about £11 million. Chelsea posted a profit of £128 million. None of it broke a rule, not the Premier League's anyway. UEFA does not accept money from selling things to a company your owner also owns, so the same transaction that made Chelsea compliant at home left them exposed in Europe. One set of accounts, 2 regulators, 2 different answers. So the clubs folded it out, 14-6 last November. PSR is gone and the rule is now a ratio. Squad cost ratio. Add up player wages, the head coach's wages, agent fees, and that spread out transfer spending. Divide it by what the club earns, stay under 85%, and if you are in Europe, 70%. Notice what is not in that, not the people who run the club, not the scouts, not the assistant coaches, not anyone selling shirts, not the academy, and not the women's team. The ratio measures the first team and man picking it and nothing else. There is a room above the line. Every club starts with a 30-point allocation, so the real ceiling is 115. In between you pay a fine. Above it you lose 6 points, and another point for every $6.5 million you are over. That fine is not much of a threat. The league's own worked example is a club that overspends by £250,000 at a ratio of 89%. The penalty is £10,000. So in practice there is one line that matters, and it's the red one. And the allowance shrinks when you use it. Spend at 105 this year, and next year's allowance drops from 30 down to 10. Your ceiling comes down to 95. The same spending that cost you a fine becomes a point deduction. Selling things to yourself does not help anymore. Asset sales no longer count as revenue. The hotels would not work today. There is a second set of rules that came in at the same time, and that one passed unanimously. The squad cost ratio is about competition. This is about clubs going bust. 3 tests. A club has to hold at least £12.5 million in cash or in credit it can draw on in every month of the year. It has to survive a stress test of £85 million of losses across 2 seasons, modelled on getting relegated or missing out on Europe, and its liabilities cannot be more than 90% of what it owns, falling to 80% by the end of the decade. Fail those and you do not lose points. You're told to submit a plan. If the plan is not good enough, the league starts approving your contracts for you. And PSR is not quite dead either. It still runs in the Championship and it follows a relegated club down. UEFA keeps its own rule on top with a €60 million allowance of its own. So a club in Europe is now being measured by 2 organisations against 2 limits on 2 sets of definitions at the same time. One thing survived. A club's financial year ends on the 30th of June. That makes the last week of June a second transfer deadline, and it is the one nobody outside football has heard of. When a club sells a player it bought, it can only count the profit above what that player is still worth in the books. When it sells a player it produced itself, there is nothing to subtract, the whole fee is profit. So in the last days of June 2024, clubs spent about £245 million on academy players. The clearest one, Everton and Aston Villa swapped Tim Iragbunam and Lewis Dobbin for £9 million each. Identical fees, no money changed hands on net. Both clubs' accounts improved. The new rules did not close this. Profit on player sales still counts as revenue, and academy costs do not count against you at all. If anything, June matters more now. That last part cuts the other way too, and it is the one change nobody objected to. What a club earns from its academy and its women's team counts towards the ratio. What it spends on them does not. For the first time, the rules pay a club to put money into both. So who is actually in trouble? Nobody publishes this. One analyst, PSR Watch, models it from failed accounts, and those are their estimates. Take the order seriously and the exact numbers loosely. Fulham are the club they show the workings for. Wages 187 million, transfer fees spread across the contracts 71 million, agents and bonuses 10 million, 268 million of squad cost against 238 million of income, 113%. That leaves them £6 million short of a points deduction. 12 of the 20 are over their line, and the line is not the same for everybody. 9 clubs are in Europe this season, so they get measured against 70 rather than 85. Crystal Palace won the Conference League in May, Aston Villa won the Europa League, Bournemouth finished 6th and qualified for the first time in their history. All 3 had their spending ceilings cut by 15 points for it. Chelsea, Newcastle, Tottenham and Nottingham Forest are all on the looser limit. They are on it because they failed to qualify. Tottenham have the most room in the league, 119 million. Arsenal, Liverpool and Man United all spent a smaller share of their income than most of the division, and all 3 are over their 70 anyway. 85% of 180 million is 153 million. 85% of 700 million is 595. A rule that caps everyone at the same percentage does not close the gap, it holds it exactly where it is. None of this stops at 20 clubs. Measured against the same 70%, only about a quarter of championship clubs would comply, and the spending a promoted club is allowed under the ratio is less than a third of what it actually costs to stay in the Premier League. So a club goes up, cannot spend enough to survive, comes back down and brings the wage bill with it. There was an answer to this in the same vote. It was called anchoring, and it would have kept the biggest clubs at 5 times whatever the bottom club earns from TV. 12 clubs voted it down. The Players' Union had threatened to sue because a ceiling on what clubs spend is a ceiling on what players get paid. UEFA have noticed. In March, their Director of Financial Sustainability stood up at a conference in London and said the Premier League's new limit will create tensions in the market. 40% of the most valuable players in the world already play in England. He called it a worrying concentration. His limit is 70, the Premier League's is 85 and 115 before anybody loses a point. The Premier League's chief executive answered that leagues get to decide what is best for themselves. The Premier League wrote a rule to keep its clubs competitive with each other. UEFA wants clubs to stop going bust. One ratio cannot do both. Your club can still sign someone, it has to sell someone first, and it has to do it before the 30th of June.